You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. Dr. Dawn O'Neill is a visionary founder of the new Dawn Distilling Company, where sustainability is not a trend, but a guiding principle rooted in purpose and legacy. Inspired by her family values of stewardship, resilience, and entrepreneurship, she has built her distillery with a commitment to environmentally responsibility, production, and community-centered growth. Through her work, she is not only crafting spirits, but she's honoring generational wisdom while shaping a more sustainable future for our industry. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite cocktail, and enjoy the show. Dawn, welcome to Served Up. I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you guys for inviting me. I am really excited to have a chat with you as well.
Let's get started. Before your brands, titles, and businesses, who were you before the beverage industry found you?
I'm like, how far do you want to go back? Because I feel as though I have semi-changed. I want to say it's been growth, changed who I am. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I have always been involved in nature and love nature, hiking, camping, canoeing on the river with my father and everything. My mom's side of the family is from Louisiana, Texas area. My dad, Jersey and everything. So two very wildly different outdoor experiences, if you will. And I feel sometimes I was in a past life an ecologist. I got my PhD in ecology, studying the impact of climate change on migration in a small songbird, the dark-eyed junco or the snowbird. And then I jumped into conservation and found myself, if you will, along the way, falling in love with whiskey and bourbon and wanting to get into the industry.
From burbs to whiskey.
Yes.
I'm a big birdie myself. So I think that's really, really funny that you said that. I have a bird buddy. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yes, the feeder with because my husband has been sort of saying, should we get one of those? Because I will say in my past life, I used to say I'm not a birder. I'm like, no, I'm not an ornithologist. I am an ecophysiologist. I just use birds to answer interesting questions about physiology and climate and the environment. But when I met him, he sucked me into the bird world, essentially because he'd just be like, oh, what is that? What is that? And I'm like, I don't know. It's not a junco. And so I had to learn.
I get juncos in my feeder. I actually have one right now because you can change their names.
Yes.
And so when they come up, so my junco is named Feather Locklear.
Oh my God. I love that. Oh, you're right. I do need one of those.
I didn't know that
had that capability. Really? Oh my God.
I have a cardinal named Ted Lasso.
Yes.
and a dove named Beak Yonsei. So it's ridiculous when they come. Yes, you need one. It's so much fun.
Okay. I'm invested now.
Yes, it's so fun. Can you take us back to that moment when you first realized this industry could be a space for you, like not just to work in, but to build in?
Well, I guess I will say that would have to be, I was leaving my last position and I was working with a professional coach. She essentially sort of coached me out of my job. And one of those questions she asked was like, what are the things you love? What do you see yourself doing, when you're retired? And also, like, if money and time and whatever weren't an option, what would you do? And for me, whiskey and bourbon, and like really that is my love. Whiskey is my love, bourbon, rye, all of that. It had always been like this hobby, if you will. And I really got into it in graduate school. Before then, I love to tell the story of my father. When I was an undergrad, we were at his sort of local watering hole and he got a pour of Gentleman Jack. That was his preferred whiskey of choice. And he was like, "Oh, do you want to try it?" And I was like, "Sure." And I'm like, probably freshman, sophomore and everything. So I'm like, I took it like a shot and his face, but I was like, "Ooh, that's really smooth," and everything because, as an undergrad, a lot of the times what you're drinking is really crap alcohol and everything. And so that sort of flavor profile, like really intrigued me at the time. I didn't like pursue it seriously though, till I got to graduate school and I was hanging out with a lot of nerdy graduate students who are really into whiskey. And it's like, put scientists, put whiskey together. Yeah, we're going to be super nerdy. We're going to do double blind tastings and whatever. I don't know where we got the money for the whiskey we had because it was all really high quality stuff. But that's what really started me down that road of, oh, there is both these flavor profiles, there are these techniques. At the time, this is before, I always feel like I'm dating myself or something, but we're like talking like 2004, 2005 and whatever, before it like whiskey exploded. And you could get all of those like experimental expressions. And I felt like, distillers were a lot more willing to like push the envelope. And so it's like you could get differences in, terroir and all of that. Like it was just a really intriguing spirit to me compared to say vodka. And I used to be a gin hater, but I'm becoming a slow convert, if you will.
Here you
but like
go.
it just had more flavor, more to it, more of a story. And that really resonated with me too, given my, family's Southern roots. My grandfather was a chef. And we always sort of say, oh, in the family, are we super tasters? Nobody has been tested and everything. But like, we definitely have, I want to say seasoning and putting together flavors and whatever is always to a next level. And so for me, I felt like that's maybe also why I was drawn to the whiskey side of things. It was like that history of what are the flavors? Like, how can these things come together and everything? And this is long before I even got into the cocktail side of things.
That's really cool. So your grandfather was a chef in New Orleans or another part of the country?
He was a chef in Houston, Texas at the time.
Okay.
So my mom actually grew up in Houston. And so I remember Houston before it was the concrete jungle that it is.
Yeah.
It's insane. And I say that because when I grew up, like I said, I was into nature. There was a big field. My grandfather's house ended in a dead end. It was a huge field that is now highway and whatever. We used to, gather crawfish out of the ditches. Now I wouldn't even dream of it. You know what I mean? Like it's like just like all of those pieces, but his sort of introduction to, I will say, cooking and baking and food. He used to be the person for any holiday. He would like, all the stops, take out all the stops. It was always amazing.
I do believe that you have to have a knack for flavor if you're going to be in this industry.
Yes, I agree. And I see that sometimes, and maybe, that's true because it's like, I always say I got into this industry because of the science side of things, but being able to appreciate, I think, and truly when I like took this leap, I didn't know much about the industry at all. I'm not a distiller. I am, playing around with blending and whatever, but by no means a master blender. It's more of here are the flavor profiles I'm looking to put together. Somebody help me get to that profile and then being able to say, yes, that's what I want. And I see that there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who just want to put out a product and aren't interested in that flavor. And that always kind of makes me sad, especially when you come in already with a platform. I get frustrated every single time a celebrity spirit comes out that isn't fantastic. Cause I'm like, you guys had the money, you had the connections, you had all of the things going for you to be able to put out something like revolutionary. And instead
I agree.
You're relying on us small guys.
Yeah. It's crazy. Can you tell us about that moment when Dawn Distilling became more than idea? For you, it really became, and it felt like something that was necessary.
So I finally had it at my last job. I literally dropped the mic. I quit. I didn't give 2 weeks notice and everything. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I was sitting in my office like, oh my God, what do I do next steps? And this idea of New Dawn Distilling I will say the original name was going to be Second Sun Distilling. And that's the parent company and everything. And so I was like, this had been bouncing around my head, the how, the why, and whatever. And I literally just said, fuck it, and incorporated. So what I did, that to me, that was just like, we're doing this. Because I just was like, I'm going to fill out this paperwork. It takes like 5 minutes. And what do you know? A week later, I was incorporated. And that was like the kick in the pants, if you will, for making this become a reality. And then I just started talking about it to people saying, hey guys, I incorporated. I moved forward on this. And somebody put me in touch with NASDAQ has a Milestone Circles program. It's a program for women entrepreneurs. And they put you in these small groups, these small cohorts, and you meet, I think it's every other week, every 2 weeks, to essentially like, what are your company's values? What are the missions? What big thing do you want to accomplish and whatever? And I was like, well, I want this brand off the ground and I want to drop Juneteenth next year. And those women pushed me down that pathway. It was like, have you done this? Did you reach out to whatever? And like, but really it was for me, it was like a switch. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I've been saying I want to start a brand, or I wanted to do a distillery. You found out you could start a brand. Just do it. Just see how it's going to work out.
You are so bold and brave.
But I tell people, but you have to be bold and brave in this industry. But also, like, everybody who hesitates, I'm like, imagine, or I know you're thinking about all the reasons why people would tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine if you did it anyway, and like me, found out you could fly, because that's what happened. I was like, oh, nervous. And then I was like, oh shit, kids, I have wings. Like, you can't tell me anything. So
that's amazing. That's so amazing. And so Dawn Distilling is rooted with purpose, right?
Yes.
And so what personal experiences really shaped that mission?
So it is I know, and there are a lot of places, or a lot of people sort of had that tagline, intention from grain to glass. For me, it was because I had gone into conservation because I wanted to change the world. And in the end, I was like, I'll say I wasn't changing the world fast enough. It didn't go as I was expecting and everything. And so, but I remember the number of times I'd had conversations with other conservationists, community members over glasses of whiskey, and how easy it is to talk conservation, not just because everybody's inhibitions may be lowered and everything, but to talk conservation with whiskey as your backdrop, just because it is so like clean water, organic grains, or like, I'm just want agriculture. All of those things are problems with oaks and everything. All of those are easily told in a story that people want to listen to and are invested in, because you've got a delicious glass of whiskey and you're like, oh shit, man, we might not have this if we don't do something.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that a lot of folks don't understand that the spirits industry is tied so closely into agriculture.
Agreed.
I mean, they are married hip to hip.
Agriculture and clean water. And I know that people are like, well, you're distilling, and so you remove, and it's like, I mean, are you really going to try to tell the people in Kentucky and Tennessee, and I would argue New York, that, oh, the water doesn't matter? Absolutely not. Nobody believes that, and you know it. You need that clean water. That is key. That's the basis and everything. But that agricultural bit is like, it is a piece I think that a lot of people skip out on. And the realization that a lot of times your grains are coming as feed. And people do amazing work with grains that were initially grown not for human consumption, but, feeding our, cows and pigs and whatever. But when you look at, I will say offerings that are playing around with those grains from both your ancestral or your indigenous and everything, you're really getting big changes in flavor. Even the going from the standpoint of organic grains. And like I say, because all of the grains for New Dawn's offering are locally sourced and everything. And you're going to get like just completely different flavor profiles out of those grains because it's New York winter wheat. It had to go through a stupid cold winter and at times very hot, summers and everything before it's harvested. You're going to get that change and that difference. And that's definitely one of the things that I would like to be able to show people. We started out in New York, but I intend to be offering whiskeys from around the country just to be able to show people, hey, here's how climate and geography play this role. This is why it's important for us to be talking conservation over delicious glasses of whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it in the way like single malt approaches their categories, you can very distinctly tell something that comes from a different region. And it's all based on the terroir. It's all based on the grains. It's all based on nature.
Exactly. And it's so weird to me that we don't do that here as it relates to whiskey. And sometimes there are moments when I wonder if it's because I will admit, I love the narrative of, Kentucky bourbon country and everything. And so you are like, oh, the only place you can get really good bourbon is Kentucky. And that's just not true.
It's just
anymore.
not true.
It's not. And then when you dig into the history, because that's been like one of the things most recently in particular, where you find out that people have been distilling whiskey all over this country for centuries. Mm-hmm. And there were, towns like even in what is it? I was just in Illinois, recently, and we were listening to some history podcast, and they were mentioning how like there was booming, spirits distillation, whiskey distillation going on in, was it Peoria? And
I'm sure in Southern Illinois.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Especially during racketeering days with Al Capone. Are you kidding me? I have a whole story about my family with the Italians that immigrated over here being all part of that nonsense. But yes.
But and they were
crazy.
Like, but that's like, it's amazing. And it's like, we've lost that history in small part because we like the romanticism of the rolling hills of, Kentucky and everything. And I'm like, but there are some real game changers out there, both out west and everything, as well as the Midwest and even the Northeast that I'm just like sort of discovering and really excited about.
Well, I do think that America is still telling the whiskey and bourbon story.
Yes.
Our country's not that old. I think that we're still figuring out like how to tell that story.
And I think, I agree. And I think it'll be interesting to see how we adapt, especially when I think about, the issues with oak and how we've said American oak. And are we going to change that? Is it going to be any oak, or is it just going to be an American tree? Or are we going to scrap that altogether so we can remain nimble and quick as it relates to changes in climate and everything, and start looking towards sustainability in that sense and everything, like, okay, where can we sort of, what can we bring in that will give us those same, I will say, historic flavors while not relying so heavily on one species that could be taken out at any time.
Can you talk about what you offer? What does Dawn Distilling offer? Can you talk about the different bottles?
Yes.
So our listeners are hip to, what you're all about.
Yeah. So New Dawn Distilling has a 6-year-old bourbon whiskey. That was our first offering. It was dropped on Juneteenth of 2024. Cask strength. Both of our offerings are cask strength. I am a higher proof girl, but also I am can I say an equal opportunist, if you will? I feel like I want you to be able to taste it as it comes out, like what it, like good liquid tastes like, and then you can adjust it as you see fit. So we have the 6-year-old, which is cask strength 117, as well as a 10-year-old wheated whiskey, which is also cask strength. Going a little bit for those higher age statements, just because of the really cool things that you can do as it relates to aging. So both of the whiskeys here, one of the things that drew me to Alton Distilling, which is the small distillery that I'm working with for these first two offerings, is that the distiller has some connections to the Caribbean. He was married at one point in time to a Caribbean woman, spent a lot of time down there learning about rum. And so rum is aged, obviously, high temperatures. And it was kind of like, let's try and see what happens here if we do that with whiskey. So the first 2 years at the beginning, both of these whiskeys are aged at high temperatures, sort of mimicking the Caribbean. And then New York gets to do what she's going to do to them. And so that's why both of the offerings very dark in color. Everybody is always like, how is that 6-year so dark? That's why. We're also using smaller barrels, 52-gallon Calvin Cooperage, number 3 chars. So we like really pulling all that flavor out that first 2 years. And then, like I said, letting that climate have its way with everything. While they both are high proof, neither one drinks high proof. People tell me they drink more like a 90. Very smooth. That 6-year has this wonderful velvety mouthfeel, and it smells amazing. It is like, it's the one that I've converted so many people with who are not previously whiskey drinkers, just because you can sit there and you're just smelling and you take a couple of sips and take a couple of sips. And before you know it, you've finished your glass, but it's been such an experience, such a journey. It's also plays super well in cocktails because of that high proof. Whereas the 10-year is I've been told it's more experienced, but I still disagree. I'm like, if you want a little bit sweeter, I want to say smoother, but there is this heat on it that a lot of people have said, I'll say a lot of Black people in particular have said they've really enjoyed, because it kind of reminds you of eating a little bit like spicy food, but in the best way, where you take that sip, it's a little bit spicy and everything, but then it fades away. And so then you're like kind of chasing that spice and those flavors with every single sip. So those are our first two offerings. Both of them came out in 2024, 6-year in June and the 10-year in November.
It's so exciting. I love the Caribbean influence as well. It's such a new take on this category. And it's so hard to be innovative, I feel like, particularly with whiskey, because it's so rooted in strict rules. Let's be real. Right?
But I feel like
the same. So it's fun to hear something new.
Rules are made to be broken. And so I do think for me, I will say for me, it has been a moment, because I at first was like, I was going to stick with a bourbon and a rye. And I'm not a wheated person. I used to say I hate wheated. Well, I was blown away by this one. I did whole double blind tastings when choosing and everything. And it didn't taste like most wheats taste to me. Because to me, there's like a bitter note in the back that I just can't get with. I don't know what it is. But this one I like, because I had a brief. I was like, these are the flavors I'm looking for. This is like, I want distilleries that are working in the, sustainability space, organic grains, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was surprised both by the number that came through, but also when I had big font, no wheated. And Alton was like, but this one is so delicious. And I was like, no wheated, but you should try it. No wheated. And they just put it in the box. And then I was like, damn it. So, but it came up in blind tastings again and again at the top of the list. And so in the end, I was like, well, I guess my first 3 offerings are this bourbon, this wheated, and this spectacular California rye that I'm hoping to be able to release this upcoming spring.
That's really exciting. There's so many options in whiskey. You don't have to just stick with one thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And I think sometimes whiskey can surprise you.
Very much so. I mean, I think, and I want to say that's what I'm looking for, the surprise. I really do. I feel like there was, back in the day, there was way more like people looking to surprise. And that is what I am looking for. I want the surprising, the not mainstream. As you were saying before, that it's like, sometimes it's hard to be innovative in this space But I still maintain that where the innovation lies is very much so in the flavor profiles of what we think a wheated is supposed to taste like, what we think a 6-year-old bourbon should taste like, what we think a rye should taste like, whether we think whiskeys are, summer or winter or all season round drinks and everything. Like those are the spaces where we have those are the times where you have the spaces to innovate, is in that flavor side of things.
Yeah. And that's what keeps it fresh too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And probably keeps you coming back because you know that this is not going to be boring.
Yes, exactly. And it definitely working in this industry, not boring.
Oh God, no. That is one thing. With that said, can we talk about you being an entrepreneur? Because really what you did is completely bold. You said you put your 2 weeks in, you started this amazing distillery, this whole new business for yourself. Let's talk about you being an entrepreneur, because I think that a lot of our listeners are very curious and maybe even thinking about that for themselves, to take that leap. So can you talk about, when things get heavy for you, whether it's financially, emotionally, or even creatively, what really brings you back to your why?
My values. And so truly that is from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And I am so grateful for the Milestone Circles program for making, like, it kind of felt like at the beginning, I was like, don't we need this? Or should we be putting together business plans and, pitches for investors, and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, nope, we're starting out with values and your mission and everything. But for me, it's been the values, because those don't change. Your mission might even drift a bit. And I'll say, and I want to tell people it's okay to drift a bit when you're first starting out, because especially jumping into an industry that's so hard to know about from the outside. Like if you're thinking about leaping into the industry, you think, you don't. There's so much in this industry that is just learned by doing. But if your values are strong, if you root your company in those values, when things get heavy, when it's like, when I want to throw the computer at the wall and everything, as I currently am, I'm enraged by the state of the world and everything and want to, be able to change things. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all I got is this whiskey brand. And then it's like, remember my values and everything. Remember that I'm all about authentic partnerships, for example. So is there somebody I can partner with that'll help me feel like I'm doing something, that I'm moving the needle forward and everything? Am I respecting the people that I'm working with? Am I feeling angry right now because I feel like they don't respect me? And so maybe that's a time for us to say, this is not working for us anymore. But the values are really what have sort of kept me on the path, my head held high and everything. I mean, I have not yet once since starting this business thrown a tantrum on the floor. And I used to do that all the time. So for me, I feel like that's why I say values are so important, because before it was like, I'm working off of some other company's values and everything, but now I'm working with my own. Right. And so I don't have to throw the tantrum on the floor being like, how am I going to fit into this box and everything? Yes. Because, I created that box. And so I created it and I can tear it down if need be and whatever. And so it's so much more freeing to be working in a company or, working in a space where I can do so that in a way that's aligned with my values.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. I love what you just said. It's just so important, to get back to the why.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, with that said, can you talk to maybe some of the challenges that surprised you that you came up against in the whiskey space?
I always feel like because I have created also this community of other Black women in particular who are working in this space and everything. And, we get together and we lament. It's always the 3-tier system that this is the part where I'm like, and I know people talk about it. And if you have listened and whatever, but like the ways that it slaps me in the face on a weekly basis and everything, that and the prohibition laws that we have in place, those are like my biggest challenges. And I say that even more so than anything related to finances and whatever, because I as my therapist is always reminding me, I am resourceful. And so on the finance, I'm like, oh, finance side, we could do this instead. And anytime I'm like, oh, no, we can't, it'll be because of the 3-tier system or because of these prohibition laws that have been that are put in place. And you're just like, because I cannot sell the whiskey directly to you. I can't hand you a bottle and take money from you. I can't do that. There are so many layers. Maybe it would be better if we just talked about the bureaucracy of it.
Oh God, the red tape.
Yes.
We need a whole nother podcast for that.
Right. Exactly. But because that has been the biggest challenge. And so I'll say I am fortunate in that I have been able to self-fund this. And I would say fortunate, but then the reason why I'm able to self-fund this is because both of my parents have passed and, left. They were all about Black legacy. And so they left, but funding for me able to do this and everything. But it has been one of those things when I start talking about investors, because you want them to be aligned with your values. I'm going to go back there and I'm going to say, I want them to be aligned with the values while also having to beat your head against the bureaucracy, the red tape, the 3-tier system, and the laws and everything. And where those come together, that is sometimes where my values are like, I don't know. I'm like, damn it, this was all written for a bunch of old white men.
Well, and it was created by.
Yes, right? Exactly.
A bunch of old white men. Yeah. And as you go into the different states have different laws.
Yes, exactly.
And people don't realize that when it comes to selling liquor or creating liquor around spirits, around wine, around all of it. Every state, every region comes with its whole different set
which
of laws.
Is bananas.
It is bananas.
I live in New Orleans. And I know my product is distilled in New York, but I'm always telling people that's because a Southern palate went up north and was like, hey, these guys know what they're doing. But I still cannot get, I should say not get, I still do not have distribution in Louisiana because of some of the laws and whatever in place. Same thing, my mom's home state, Texas, and everything, where a large majority of my mom's side of the family now lives, that is not in Louisiana, want to be able to they have a 3-tiered system inside of a 3-tier, like their 4th tier. And you're just kind of like, this is insane.
Yeah.
It's just insane. But I go back to my values. I am currently talking to building that community of people who are essentially saying, this is insane. This is BS. But how can we game this system? And it is having a collective number of minds of thinking, looking at things differently is what is needed here, of people who are willing to, sort of push the limit as far as we can go in terms of how can we do this? The company that I use for my online sales, for example, so much freedom they have given me and everything. And so understanding that shipping costs I'm like, Greg, shipping costs is an issue here for my peoples. How can we bring this down and whatnot? And him being like, well, you know what? You're actually one of my top sellers. Let me go negotiate on your behalf with the retailers that I'm working with. That's the type of thing where we're like these small communities, you're right. We need to push this forward. And how do we do this? And I think that that's really where we're going to see some change in this industry. I mean, we should not need another pandemic because the pandemic did open up whole new spaces as it relates to online sales and all of that. But we shouldn't need another pandemic in order for us to be able to innovate in this space as it relates to connecting to consumers.
Yeah. I mean, the pandemic's a whole nother conversation.
A whole nother episode.
A whole nother episode. And a lot of things did change because of the pandemic, whether it might be cocktails to go.
Yes.
But
you used to only be able to get in New Orleans. Now you can get them everywhere.
I know. You mentioned your parents. And so if it's okay, I would love to ask you a question about your parents and the legacy that you're leaving because of your parents. When you think about legacy, who were your parents? Can you talk a little bit about them and what parts of them live through you?
So both of my parents were accountants. I will say that. And it's important to say that because that was part of the legacy from what they left me and my sister and everything, because they were essentially very much aware of the benefits and privileges that their parents had given them and how to pass this on. So they were both accountants. My mom worked for the federal government for I don't even know how many years. My father, I will always remember him as working for British Petroleum when they like first opened their office in Cleveland and everything before he sort of went off doing tax accounting and all of that. And so from their perspective, what they've left me is like, there's both the like, I'll say that accounting financial mindset and everything, but also from my father, I get this, I want to say, maybe that's where that bravery comes from of, cause he, you know, he ended up getting laid off from BP. And that's when he sort of like went out on his own. And, you know, it's always scary when you're starting your own business and everything, or when you're going into a new endeavor like he did. And so he's the one who sort of was like, showed me that you do not have to put yourself in that box. So I have always said I've had 3 lifetimes. I was a, you know, an ecologist and everything. I was then a conservationist. And then when I was a little kid, I was just this nature lover. I thought I was going to be a marine biologist and all of that. And so it's like, you know, I've already reinvented myself 3 times, I think, thanks to my father. And that's sort of like being able to see that in him, as well as he's the one, again, giving me that love of whiskey. My mom, far more practical in terms of like, if you're going to make these leaps, if you're going to do these things, how do we set them up so they'll be sustainable? How do we set them up so that you won't have to be looking at everything as a hardship, but just the things that are outside of your control, I guess is what I'll say, as more as the hardships and everything. She was also very patient, and she had a wicked pen. She was a big fan of the sternly worded letters. Oh. And I feel like that is definitely something that she has left behind. And I'll say it like, it's not that I write that many sternly letters, but I find myself writing a lot of blog posts, a lot of like, you know, as it relates to trying to communicate and everything to my community and my consumers and everything. And I can appreciate that sort of like patience and way with words that she has given me. But then both of them, just because they thought to themselves, we'd like to be able to leave our children with some money, some real estate, and whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
We called it my father's real estate empire. It was not. It was a joke. It was a long-standing joke as it related to 3 suburban houses in Cleveland that in the end were not worth much and everything. But they were thinking about that. But the point is that they were thinking about that legacy long before my sister and I were even old enough to care. And I will say that as it relates to starting New Dawn, that is one of the things for both of them have given me that is at the forefront is what is the legacy of this company? What do I want to happen? And I mean, I don't know I don't know. At the same time, I can tell you what I want and everything, or what I would love. I would love to leave this to my nieces and my nephews and everything, and have them carry on the New Dawn legacy of, you know, whiskeys or other spirits, you know, that's like what never makes them excited and happy. But I also am like, okay, if nobody wants it, that's okay. I can do like my parents did. And I mean, whereas they had no caveats on what we could do with, I would be like, yeah, you can take this, you sell this company, take this money, but you got to use it for your own entrepreneurial endeavor. Because I would have never been able to take that leap. It is true. I would never have been able to take that leap without knowing, okay, I knew I have this nest egg that I can use to start this journey.
Sure. And so when someone talks about Dawn Distilling years from now, right? What do you hope they say it stood for? What do you hope it makes them feel?
I want to say that I hope that they see that it stands for purpose. And maybe because of the way I'm feeling right now, hopeful. And I say that because I am just a whiskey company, but I have like all these, like, I want to be like, I'm not out here, kids, to sell whiskey. I'm out here to educate you conservation and whatever, and get you behind, saving our planet and everything, while also saving whiskey and drinking whiskey and enjoying whiskey and building community and all of that. And so I would like for people to sort of look at it and feel hopeful that maybe we are turning or changing the tides as it relates to, how capitalism shows up in our day-to-day life and everything. Because yes, I am still selling whiskey, but also how you might be able to take some entrepreneurial dream of yours and everything and turn it into something with purpose.
That's wonderful. Where can our listeners find you?
I'm on all the socials, not on TikTok or Twitter, on all the socials under New Dawn Distilling. You can find us online, and that's probably the easiest for everybody in terms of wanting to purchase, newdawndistilling.com. We do have placements in a couple of places in Illinois, Maryland, DC, New York, California. I think I got all of them, but all of those are also like, go to the website. That's where all the information is. You can also Google, like, I've been so shocked in terms of the things you can Google that will pop up about New Dawn. And I'm like, oh, okay. You can also Google. So we've got enough of an SEO presence that you can find information that way, but everything is on the website, newdawndistilling.com, including, all of my musings, putting my mother's teachings and writing together. My spiritual musings is what I call it. Spiritual.
It's beautiful.
As well as, tons of different cocktail recipes. I have more than 78, but I had enough cocktail recipes that we put together a 78 card tarot deck in a nod to New Orleans and our, I'll say celestial pinnings. Yes, I'll go celestial pinnings. So yes, I will say we've got a good community going, trying to build it and make it stronger for sure. I always tell people, I want to hear what you think. I really do. I get all the messages is what I tell people. So right now you aren't talking to my, marketing intern. The marketing intern is me. So comments, emails and everything, I'm the one who answers. And I love to hear what people think about the whiskeys, what they think about, how whiskey can play a role, like I said, in having purpose.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm really excited for you and your journey. Would you come back and chat with me again in the future, maybe later this year, to see like what you're up to?
Yeah, of course. Would love to.
That would be fantastic. And, with that, I want to wish you some really good health and a lot of peace as well.
Yes.
And thank you so much for coming on Served Up. I do feel like, we need to have you back. I think that there's more to this conversation.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really enjoyed it. I like when people don't think that I just rambled incoherently.
No, not at all. No, cheers to you, Dawn. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Cheers to you as well.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glaciers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.